Imagine you're at a trivia night, and the host asks you to name a country that shares a land border with Brazil. You might think of Argentina or maybe Peru, but one of the longest borders Brazil shares is actually with the European nation of France. If that sounds wrong to you, it's perfectly understandable. When most of us think of France, we immediately picture Paris, baguettes, and the Eiffel Tower. That familiar hexagon in Western Europe is only one part of the story. France is actually the only country with land territories spanning the Americas, Africa, Oceania, and even Antarctica. To understand how this works, we have to look at how the French government treats these overseas territories. They are not managed as traditional colonies or outposts. Legally, they are 100% part of France. The people who live in these areas carry French passports, vote for the French president, and send their own representatives directly to the French Parliament in Paris. Under the French Constitution, standing in a South American rainforest is legally identical to standing on a street in central Paris. Let's start that global tour back in South America. French Guiana is covered almost entirely by dense Amazon rainforest, and by land area, it is the largest administrative department in all of France. Because it sits so close to the equator, it takes less fuel to launch heavy objects into orbit from here. That makes this tropical forest a strategically vital site for the European Space Agency's rocket launches. From that hot equatorial launch pad, we travel thousands of miles north to the cold waters off the coast of Canada. Here we find the islands of St. Pierre and Miquelon. These rocky islands are the last remaining piece of the former French Empire in North America. Today, you'll find about 6,000 people living among these colorful coastal houses and working in the fishing industry.
The exact same domestic laws govern both the space engineers in the tropics and the families living just 20 kilometers from the Canadian coast. Moving into the Caribbean Sea, France governs several island groups, including Guadeloupe, Martinique, Saint Martin, and Saint Barthélemy. These are major tourist destinations and home to hundreds of thousands of French citizens. If we cross over to the coast of Africa, in the Indian Ocean, we find the islands of Mayotte and Réunion. This bar chart shows the total population of all these global territories combined. Nearly 3 million people live in overseas France, and you can see here that Réunion alone accounts for almost a third of that number. Across these islands, you will find a multi-ethnic society with deep roots in African, Indian, Chinese, and European cultures. These regions represent millions of citizens, giving the French Republic a permanent physical presence and a shared cultural history in both the Caribbean and the Indian Ocean. Traveling east into the Pacific Ocean, we arrive in Oceania. Here, France administers the archipelago of New Caledonia and French Polynesia, known for its white sailboats and lush green mountains. The history here stretches back far beyond European arrival. Polynesian navigators settled these islands as early as 500 BCE, establishing a culture that remains central to the region today. Finally, we reach the frozen edge of the world, Antarctica. France maintains a permanent, year-round scientific research station here in a district called Adélie land. There is a specific legal caveat here. While French law recognizes this as territory, the sovereignty claim is peacefully frozen in place by the International Antarctic Treaty. With this final icy outpost, the French Republic successfully extends its domestic borders across the continents, from the tropics to the South Pole. This chart shows the Republic's land area. Overseas territories make up a full 18% of France's total territory. Because they are so widely scattered, France covers 12 time zones, more than any other country, including massive nations like Russia. Because of that geographic reach, the sun is quite literally always shining on some part of the French Republic. Looking at a standard map of Europe only tells part of the story. The hexagon we all recognize is just the center of a much larger global network. Seeing France this way makes you reconsider what a country actually is. We usually define a nation by a neat line on a map, but if millions of people, living in the Amazon, the Caribbean, and the Pacific, are all governed by the same parliament, the definition of a country becomes much broader. So, what do you think? Is a nation defined by its land, or by a shared identity and set of laws? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.